恭敬大德圣听，为此法会集一切众生，请转妙法轮教导我们如何了生脱死，离苦得乐，速证无生。Builder Shankar with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to live suffering and attain peace and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo saranto suchetoye alahati sanmiao sanputo che. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in the billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo, quelling disasters, lending life, Medicine Master Buddha. 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 Medicine Master does come one. 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 Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, all good knowing advisors, Amitofo, welcome back. This is Sutra Lecture number 140. Okay, glad to see you all online. All right, let's go. Okay, before we begin, as usual, does anyone have any questions you want to ask now, or you want to type it into the chat box? Okay, 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's get to today's slides. So we're still with loving kindness, specifically on how to deal with resentment. Because if you practice loving kindness, sometimes depending on your mood or the conditions of your life that you're in right now, you might get a hurdle, you might get an obstruction, and it might come in the form of someone that you don't like. One of the 8 sufferings is being forced together with people that you don't like, and that might be happening. and it might be a hurdle, and it will prevent you from entering the first dhyana. Say if you're reciting the Buddha's name and you want to recite for 7 days with 1 to 7 days with one mind unmoving. I can't remember what the sutra says. With one, I can't remember. Sorry, but you know what I mean. You read the Amitabha, the short Amitabha Sutra. I was trying to remember the Chinese. If the part where it goes 1 day, 7 days, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Okay, anyway, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we looked at the first 3 on your screen, how to overcome resentment by strengthening your practice of loving kindness. That's one. And then the second method of practice is how not to accept insults. The third one was finding a positive quality in that person that you have an obstruction with, the person that you don't like. Today, we are going to go through, I think we have enough time to go number 4, only harming yourself or oneself. Then the next one, which is a bit weird, is called gratifying the enemy. To me, it's a bit weird, probably because I don't really know how to explain well. That's why I find it weird. But we'll see. Well, maybe you all will understand better than me. Then you can tell me what I'm missing. And the third one, I think we have enough time, is according with the Dharma. What does that mean? Well, we're going to find out. Okay, so next slide. Only harm yourself. What does that mean? So there's a verse that the Buddha gives. It says to repay angry men in kind. That means if someone is angry and then you also become angry, it says it's worse than to be angry first. Repay not angry men in kind and win a battle hard to win. Patience. Patience is very hard to come by. The Buddha continues, he says, the will of both he does promote. Will here means the well-being or the benefit of. So you help each other, his own and then the others too. Who shall another's anger know and mindfully maintain his peace. Okay, so this is the first verse or first 2 verses that I want to share with you. Followed by, now the Buddha uses logic. Okay, Buddha says, suppose an enemy has hurt you now in what is his domain. All right, so you do something and you get scolded. So that's his domain. Why? Because your enemy, you'll follow the Buddha's terminology, your enemy can choose what he wants to say and how he wants to act. That's his problem. That's his domain. Then the Buddha says, why try to hurt your own mind? That is not his domain. In other words, your mind is under your control. You are responsible for yourself. You cannot blame other people for the way you behave. No matter what they do, ultimately, only you can control what you do, what you think, what you say, and what you do in the next instant. That is why it's so hard for us to practice, and it is so hard for bodhisattvas or the Buddhas or for Shufu to so-called save us, to help us, to show us the right way. Why? You can have Guanyin right next to you. Okay, you can have Guanyin right next to you, but if in the very next moment you choose to get angry or upset, Guanyin is totally powerless. All right, that's why it's so hard to save living beings. So that's what the Buddha means in this first verse. Your mind is your domain. Your actions, your speech is your domain. It has nothing to do with the other person. But if you react in kind, then you just hurt yourself. You just hurt your own mind. And the Buddha says, this anger that you entertain is gnawing at the very roots of all the virtues that you got. Who is there such a fool as you? So you just hurt yourself. You just hurt your roots of virtue through anger. And the Buddha says, another does ignoble deeds. Ignoble is the opposite of noble, so unwholesome. And so you become angry instead. How is this? What logic is this? Do you then want to copy too the sort of acts that he commits? So that person is doing something which is unwholesome, unskillful, it's nothing good at all. There is no rhyme or reason for us to follow along, to follow after that kind. Yeah, so we should be someone who knows better. So that's what the Buddha is saying. And then the Buddha says now, and then this is from the Visuddhimagga. Buddha says, now what is the point of getting angry with another? Will not this karma of yours that has anger as its source lead to your own harm? For you are the owner of your deeds, heir of your deeds, having deeds as your parent, deeds as your kin, deeds as your refuge. You will become the heir of whatever deeds you do, meaning your karma is yours alone. You create your own karma, and how we create our own karma depends on your state of mind. So if you get angry just because other people not other people make you angry. Other people can't make you angry, but you allow yourself to get angry because you pay attention to other people's, you don't approve of someone else or whatever it is. Then through that anger or that unwholesome mental state, guess what? You're going to create new thoughts or new karma that are also unskillful. And the Buddha says, and this is not the kind of deed to bring you to full enlightenment, to undeclared enlightenment, or to the disciples' grade, or to any such position as the status of Brahma or Saka or Lord Chakra, or the throne of a wheel-turning monarch or king or original king. In other words, no wholesome or heavenly blessings await one who gets angry. The Visuddhimagga says, rather, this is the kind of deed to lead to your fall from the path, even to the status of the eaters of scraps. That might mean it may be animals, and to the manifold suffering in the hells and so on. By doing this, you are like a man who wants to hit another and picks up a burning ember or excrement in his hand and so first burns himself or makes himself stink. All right, I don't think I really need to, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? Okay. Now, the next one is like the category where I say it's a bit funny because it's about gratifying the enemy and not doing things that will make your enemy happy. That's why I say I find it a bit weird. So it says, because there are 7 things gratifying and helpful to an enemy that happen to one who is angry, whether man or woman. What 7? It says here, because an enemy wishes thus for his enemy, let him be ugly. Why is that? An enemy does not delight in an enemy's beauty. Now, this angry person is a prey to anger, ruled by anger, though well bathed, well anointed, with hair and beard, trim and clothed in white, yet he is ugly, being a prey to anger. This is the first thing gratifying and helpful to an enemy that befalls one who is angry, whether man or woman. In other words, the Buddha is trying to say, if someone doesn't like you, okay, and you get angry in return, you're actually making that your enemy happy. Why? Because no matter how you adorn yourself, no matter what kind of beautiful clothes you wear, your character becomes very ugly. And when bad things happen to someone you don't like, our human nature is such that we are glad. You know, if there's someone you don't like, you always wish for bad things to happen to that person. So this is what the Buddha is pointing to. So the next slide, the Buddha reveals what are the 7 things. So if you don't like someone, usually these are the thoughts. You say you don't want him to look good or to be happy. You don't want him. You want him to suffer pain. You want him to have no fortune, to suffer even more without money, and you do not want him to be wealthy. You do not want him to be famous. You do not want him to have friends. And the worst is when he dies or she dies, you want them after death to go to a lower destiny. Why? Because you don't like these people. So this is a total opposite of loving kindness. Loving kindness is you wish for the happiness of others. But this is a total opposite. So these are the 7 things that an enemy would wish for another person they don't like. So the Buddha says, why is that? It says, an enemy does not delight in an enemy's going to a happy destiny. Now, this angry person is a prey to anger, ruled by anger. He misconducts himself in body, speech, and mind. Misconducting himself thus in body, speech, and mind, on the breakup of the body after death, he reappears in a state of loss in an unhappy destiny, in perdition, in hell, being a prey to anger. So that's what happens when you get upset. So that's why some people, they, how you say, they do certain things, like they use the law. They want to sue people to make another person's life miserable, or they file a false police report, for example, or they do all kinds of things, just to make the other person have a miserable time. Now the Buddha uses a simile or example. I was trying to look up the difference between a simile and a metaphor. I think I understand, but I don't know how to explain. So in other words, I don't really understand at all. So I'm not sure if this is a simile or metaphor, but it's kind of like an example. Okay, so Buddha says, as a log from a prior, I think it's a fire, burn at both ends and fall in the middle, serves neither for timber in the village nor for timber in the forest. So is such a person as this, I say. So Buddha saying, basically, you're useless. You're just like a useless piece of wood. Buddha says, if you're angry now, you will be one who does not carry out the Blessed One's teaching. By repaying an angry man in kind, that means you get angry in return, you will be worse than the angry man and not win the battle hard to win. You will yourself do to yourself the things that help your enemy, and you will be like a prior log. Not sure how to pronounce that. Yeah. So don't be a useless piece of wood. Okay. All right. So actually, I'm not sure why I put the title here is according with the Dharma. Actually, this is still the gratifying enemy. But now we move to the next category, which is according with the Dharma. In other words, being a good disciple of the Buddha, of Shufu, someone who understands the Dharma and knows how to conduct themselves. So what is this? This verse is from a very well-known sutra called the Simile of the Saw. Okay, and so it starts off. This is not the sutra yet, but it refers to the sutra. Buddha says, let him reflect upon the saw with other figures of such kind and strive repeatedly to leave resentment far behind. Why does the Buddha refer to this? Because when the Buddha was speaking this verse, the people in the audience already knew what the Buddha meant, which is the sutra called the Simile of the Saw. And we'll come to that in about 2 slides' time. So the Buddha says one should admonish oneself in this way. He says, now you who get angry, has not the Blessed One said this? Because even if bandits brutally sever limb from limb with a two-handled saw, he who entertained hate in his heart on that account will not be one who carried out my teaching. So this is the standard that the Buddha expects from at least his monks, because he's teaching this. He's speaking to his bhikkhus, his mendicants. Buddha says, to this extent, this extreme, someone is sawing you apart, chopping, not even chopping, but sawing, which is an even worse experience. Someone is sawing off your arms, your legs, or your legs and your arms. The Buddha said, you cannot get upset. So this is like why is the Buddha saying this? Or why can the Buddha say this? Because the Buddha did it himself. There's a story. There's a Jataka story when the Buddha, and Shufu has shared this story before, when the Buddha was practicing patience, and he was an ascetic, and he was meditating in the jungle, in a grove, like a garden. And because he was meditating, I think he was sitting there for a very long time, and he looked really weird. He didn't really look very human. His hair was long and all. And then the king decided to go to the grove as well. And when the king went, so did his harem of all his concubines. And the concubines saw the Bodhisattva, which is not the future Buddha, sitting there. And so they were very interested in him. Why? Because he looked really weird. And they went up to him and they probably started touching his hair and all that, and asking him questions and talking to him, or maybe trying to get a response from him because he was probably sitting in meditation. Anyway, you all can use your imaginations. Anyway, the king found out, and the king got angry and jealous. He says, why is this weird looking person getting more attention than me. So he went up and he tried to pick a fight with the ascetic. He said, "Why are you doing that?" The ascetic said, "Oh, I'm practicing patience." Then the king was not happy at all. So the king tried to instigate a response. So the king said, "Oh, if you're practicing patience, then what will happen if I chop off your nose?" And the ascetic said, "Well, I won't respond," or something to that effect. I wasn't prepared to tell this story. It just came to my mind. So what did the king do? The king started by chopping off his nose. And when that didn't get a response from the ascetic, the king got even more upset. And then the king, I think, chopped off his arms and then chopped off his legs. And in the end, when the ascetic did not, still wasn't upset, the king got even more angry. And I think he wanted to chop off his head or something. And by this time, all the Dharma protecting spirits were getting really upset. And I don't remember the exact sequence because I didn't look up. I wasn't prepared to tell this story. So a few things happened. I'm not sure of the sequence, but a few things happened. One is that the king kept on taunting the ascetic. He says, "Are you angry yet? Are you sure you can't fool me? You must be angry." And the ascetic said, "If I am telling the truth that I'm not angry, something like his blood will become white, or his limbs will grow back. I think the limbs will grow back, blood become white. I don't really remember. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. But true enough, after he said that, it's called a declaration or a statement of truth. If you say something that's true, a miracle can happen if you have virtue. His limbs did grow back, and the king got even more. Now the king got afraid. From anger, he turned to fear. I think this was the point when he wanted to kill the ascetic, something like that. And this was the point when the Dharma protecting spirits got really upset, and they threatened to do something, either rain stones, that sounds like a Bible, I'm not sure, or the ground opened up to swallow the king, something like that. But the ascetic said, no, please do not harm the king. And when I become a Buddha, I vow that you will be the first person I cross. Something like that, And so that was this story. So the Buddha himself, having experienced that, can actually tell his monks, this is what I expect from you. This is the standard, that if you are a true disciple of mine, then this is what I expect. So before we go to the sutra, I wanted to share something that Shufu sometimes says in his Dharma talks. Okay, and what does Shufu say? Something to like this effect. Shufu says, if you want to be my disciple, then if you hear people slander me, you should bow to them and thank them. We don't want to be enemies with anyone. There are no enemies in Buddhism. Whoever slanders me is my good advisor. No matter who slanders me, do not speak in defense of me. All right, so this is what Shufu has spoken of a few times in different ways, but the principle remains the same. Why does Shufu say this? Well, because normally our instinct, if someone were to spread rumors, lies, slander usually means saying something which is not true. But the principle here is Shufu saying, if anyone says anything bad about him, an insult, slander or half truth or anything, don't fight back. You don't have to defend Shufu. Why does Shufu say that? Because it goes against conventional thinking. It goes away against conventional ways of normal people in this world. Well, think of it this way. If we think that Shufu is great, okay, most of Shufu's disciples naturally think that Shufu is a great master. If Shufu is a great master, shouldn't his greatness be reflected in the abilities of his disciples? Right? Just like I used this example before, if you look for a Kung Fu master, do you look for a Kung Fu master who has very impressive disciples, or you look for a Kung Fu master whose disciples can't do anything? Of course, you look for the master with whose disciples are very great example of kung fu, right? So if we think Shufu is great, then the responsibility is on us. If we think the Dharma is great, if we think the Buddha is great, then the responsibility is on us to exhibit that greatness. If not, if we fight, then we just make Shufu look really, really bad because it doesn't accord with the teachings at all, right? Okay, so this principle, I'm sharing this because this principle is found in the next sutra called the simile of the saw. This sutra is well known because the Buddha uses a lot of similes in this sutra, so we'll go through them. It's a pretty long sutra, and one of the reasons I chose this sutra is because I'm still trying to finish my paper, which I have to hand in end of this month, my research paper, and being able to share this sutra takes a lot of load of my preparing for today's lecture. But this sutra is highly relevant to our topic. Okay, so it's win-win. I win, you also win. Sutra wins as well. Okay, so I'm starting halfway in this sutra. So let me give you some context. Okay, this sutra is about the importance of patience and love. Even when love means loving kindness, even when we are faced with abuse and criticism or slander. All right. And the Buddha finishes this sutra with the simile of the saw. So that's why this sutra is also known as the saw or the simile of the saw. So at this point of the sutra, what happened before coming to this point, when the Buddha is talking to this monk called Paguna, is that Venerable Paguna was very close to the nuns. So close, in fact, that whenever he was around the nuns, and if anyone were to criticize the nuns or to complain, he would defend the nuns to the point of being unreasonable. And when anyone would criticize him, the nuns would also defend him to the point of being unreasonable. So there was no reason. So they were getting too emotional. Yeah. So at this point, someone complained to the Buddha. And so the Buddha said, okay, bring Venerable Paguna to me so I can talk to him. So the Buddha says, Paguna. So first, the Buddha's mode of questioning is always to ask the other person if it is true, what he has heard. The Buddha will explain, okay, someone has told me this, and then the Buddha always provides the opportunity for the other person to explain themselves. So Paguna said, yes, that's what has been happening with me and the nuns. So Buddha says, Paguna, so if anyone criticizes those nuns in your presence, you should give up any desires or thoughts of the lay life. Okay, what does thoughts of the lay life here mean in this context? Because upon first reading, you might, or rather for me, I thought that it meant that Venerable Paguna is thinking of going back to lay life. But in this context, it means that don't behave like a lay person. That means don't revert back to how normal people behave, because now you're a monk and I expect more from you. Okay. So Buddha says, if that happens, you should train like this. My mind will be unaffected. I will blurt out no bad words. I will remain full of compassion with a heart of love and no secret hate. So you're not a hypocrite. Inside, you feel different from an outside veneer of maybe understanding or so both in and out, you're consistent. So the Buddha says that's how you should train. Secret hate, it means resentment, one way. So Buddha says, so even if someone strikes those nuns with fists, stones, rods, and swords in your presence, you should train like this. My mind will be unaffected. I will blurt out no bad words. I will remain full of compassion with a heart of loving kindness and no secret hate. So Buddha says, to that extent, all right? Then the Buddha says, so if anyone criticizes you, so first the nuns, because he cared for the nuns a bit too much. Then now the Buddha says, if anyone were to criticize you, meaning the Venerable, same thing. Your mind should be unaffected. You won't scold in return, and you should maintain a heart of compassion and loving kindness. And then the Buddha says, so even if someone were to strike you, not just criticize, but to physically hurt you, that is how you should behave as well. All right. Then now the Buddha addresses the monks, the rest of the monks. The Buddha says, mendicants are used to be satisfied with the mendicants, meaning she's not satisfied with most of the mendicants now. Why? Because of people like Venerable Paguna. Buddha explains, he says, once I address them, I eat my food in one sitting per day. Doing so, I find that I'm healthy and well, nimble, strong, and living comfortably. You too should eat your food in one sitting per day. Doing so, you'll find that you're healthy and well, nimble, strong, and living comfortably. Then the Buddha said, I didn't have to keep on instructing those mendicants, I just had to prompt their mindfulness. So in other words, the Buddha only had to say it once. And his early disciples would understand the spirit and would be able to follow by themselves. The Buddha didn't need to remind them or to rebuke them. Okay, so now we have the first simile where the Buddha, I guess because the Buddha is already sees that the current group of monks are not very naturally adept at the training. So I guess maybe that's why in this sutra the Buddha uses so many similes to prove his point. So anyway, this is the first simile. The Buddha says, suppose a chariot stood harnessed to thoroughbreds or horses at a level crossroads with a goat ready. Then a deaf horse, is that how you pronounce that? A deaf horse trainer, a master charioteer, might mount the chariot, taking the reins in his right hand and goat in the left. He would drive out and back wherever he wishes, whenever he wishes. So someone who knows how to train horses and has trained the horses well, then the horses will do wherever is asked of them. So Buddha says, in the same way, I didn't have to keep on instructing those mendicants. I just had to prompt their mindfulness. So the Buddha is encouraging them. He says, so mendicants, you too should give up what's unskillful and devote yourself to skillful qualities. In other words, don't be like Venerable Paguna. In this way, you achieve growth, improvement, and maturity in this teaching and training. So I guess maybe the Buddha saw that some of the monks still didn't understand what was going on. And the Buddha comes up with another simile. He says, suppose that not far from a town or village, there was a large grove of salt trees that was choked with castor oil weeds. Then along comes a person who wants to help protect and nurture the grove. They would cut down the crooked saplings that were robbing the sap and throw them out. They would clean up the interior of the grove and properly care for the straight, well-formed sal saplings. In this way, in due course, that sal grove would grow, increase, and mature. And the Buddha again says, mendicants, this is how you should train yourself. Okay, maybe there were some gardeners in there. First, there were some horse trainers, then there were some gardeners, and then still there were people who maybe didn't understand. So then the Buddha starts sharing a story. And I believe I've shared this story before. I believe. Anyway, because it's part of this sutra, I'm going to share it again. Okay, so this story is slightly different from the simile. This story is about a true story. Okay, it happened, the Buddha says, right here in Savatthi, there was a housewife named Vaidurya. She had this good reputation. The housewife Vaidurya is sweet, even-tempered, and calm. So she's known for her patience. It says, now Vaidurya had a bonded maid named Kali who was deaf, tireless, and well organized in her work. So there was a maid in the house who was very good at her job. But then Kali thought one day, he said, my mistress has a good reputation as being sweet, even-tempered, and calm. But does she actually have anger in her and just not show it? Or does she really have no anger? Or is it because my work, she thinks that maybe it's because she does her work so well that her mistress, her boss, doesn't have to show anger, although she still has anger. So what does she do? She has nothing better to do. She wants to test her mistress. Okay, so I didn't include it in the slides because it's too long. I just explained what happened. So what did she do? First day, she got up late. Then the mistress asked her what was wrong, and she replied, nothing was wrong. And the mistress gave her, because she said nothing was wrong, and she said it in a way like there's no big deal. So the mistress gave her an angry look. And she thought, my mistress really has anger in her. She just doesn't show it. You know, it's not that she's like what everyone thinks, that she's full of patience. It's probably because I do my work so well, I always get up early, that there's no reason for her to show anger. Then she had this another bright, stupid idea. She says, why don't I test my mistress further? So the second day, she got up even later. Again, the mistress said, oh, is there something wrong? Are you, sick or something? And Kali, just brush off the question like, oh, no, there's nothing wrong. And this time, instead of getting an angry look from her mistress, she got scolded instead. Then Kali said, I knew it. I knew my mistress had anger in her. Yeah, it's just that I do my job well. So I'm going to test her even more. So in Hokkien, they say, chai si. How do you say that in Cantonese? Cantonese, ji se, right? How do you say that in Chinese, in Mandarin? How do you translate that? I can't say in English because there's no direct in English. There might be an equivalent. Can someone help? Chai si in Chinese? No one? Can you all hear me? Testing. Yeah, you all can hear me, right? Okay, anyway, if you all know the English equivalent, let me know as well. What's the English equivalent of chai si? Okay, anyway, so on the third day, she got up even later. Again, the mistress asked her what's wrong. And again, she just dismissed the mistress, saying, oh, there's nothing. And this time, okay, she didn't get an angry look. She didn't get a scolding, but she got hit on the head. And the mistress picked up a rolling pin and hit her on the head. And her head started bleeding. And then she ran out to the street and she shouted to everyone, her neighbors. She said, look at my mistress. You all say that she's full of patience, but just because I got up late, she hit me so hard on the head that I'm bleeding. After that, the mistress got a bad reputation. Yeah, she says the housewife Vaidurya is fierce, ill-tempered, and not calm at all. So that was a bad reputation. Anyone know? None of you know how to, let me see, English. Yeah, anyway, not important. Okay. So then the Buddha comes back to the sutra. It's still the sutra. Buddha says, in the same way, a mendicant or a monk may be the sweetest of the sweet, the most even-tempered of the even-tempered, the calmest of the calm. So Buddha is really trying to make a point. So long as they don't encounter any disagreeable criticism. But it's when they encounter disagreeable criticism that you'll know whether they're really sweet, even-tempered, and calm. So Shufu said this as well. You only know when you're really tested. Yeah. So Buddha says, I don't say that a mendicant is easy to admonish if they make themselves easy to admonish only for the sake of robes, alms food, lodgings, and medicines and supplies for the sick. Why is that? Because when they don't get robes, alms food, lodgings, and medicines and supplies for the sick, they are no longer easy to admonish. So then they show their true colors. Okay, having said this, all right, don't go and purposely test other people or other monks. The point of this is for self-reflection. It's for us to, when we think that we have reached a certain point, to reflect on ourselves, on how we behave in certain situations. Do we blame other people for how we behave? Are we able to maintain our calm and composure? And please don't go and test other monks, okay? And then they might, like me, get upset, and then we get a bad reputation. Okay. Oh, actually, there's a story. Let me see. What time is it? Oh, there's a time for a story. Okay. There's let me see where. I think Shufu shared this. Let me see if I can remember it from a sutra. I think it might be in the Lotus Sutra that Shufu shared. I'm not sure if it's actually from a Shastra, a commentary by Nagarjuna. But it goes like this. There's an old man, or there was a practitioner who was practicing patience. And he was practicing patience until he felt that, oh, I've really mastered patience. And he felt so happy with himself that he wrote a sign. What was the sign? The sign was something to do with embers. Again, this is a story I wasn't prepared to tell, but I just recall it. Does anyone remember temper, like amber? A temper like embers, meaning all the fire has gone out and you only have embers left. Yeah, something like that. And he hung that sign on the outside of his dwelling. And so he hung the sign and he was sitting there. And then along came this old lady who looked at the sign, looked at him, looked at the sign again, and then asked him, say, excuse me, can you please explain the meaning of your sign? And he says, oh, okay, let me see. Hold on. If I just have this, I open this software. Let me see if I can find the exact verse. Okay. And give me a moment. Does anyone know? This is a very famous story from Shufu. What did he say? Okay, anyway, so
Dharma Master,
yes.
I think it's something my nature is like ash.
My nature is like ash. Thank you. Yeah, you'll get the idea. And a nature like ashes or embers. Ashes. Correct. Meaning all the fire has gone out, so there are no more, only ashes left. There's nothing left to burn. So the old lady was still standing there. After a while, she said, "Oh, what does your sign say? Can you explain it to me?" And he patiently explained again. And this went on and on and on. The old lady kept on asking him to explain the sign, and he would explain. And a short while later, she would ask him to explain again, and he would explain, and she would, okay, nod her head, and show her forgetfulness, and then ask again. And apparently, this went on for a very long time. How long? Long enough for him to suddenly erupt and tell her, if I told you once, I told you a million times, it says a nature like ashes. And then Shufu in the story, he says, then the old lady transformed into Guanyin Bodhisattva, because that's who she was all along, floated in the air and told the practitioner that, it seems like you still have some embers in your ashes. So you're not quite done yet. You still have some heat in you. Says, practice well, maybe I'll see you again. Something like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So don't go and test people, and don't be too full of yourself either. If not, then someone might test you. Okay. Then coming back to the sutra, the Buddha says, but when a mendicant is easy to admonish purely because they honor, respect, revere, worship, and venerate the teaching, then I say that they are easy to admonish. So they follow the teaching. So mendicants, you should train yourselves. We will be easy to admonish purely because we honor, respect, revere, worship, and venerate the teaching. Okay. Then the Buddha continues. He says, mendicants, there are 5 ways in which others might criticize you. Their speech may be timely or untimely, true or false, gentle or harsh, beneficial or harmful, from a heart of love, or from secret hate. That means from resentment. And Buddha says, if that happens, you should train like this. Again, the Buddha repeats the formula. Our minds will remain unaffected. We will blurt out no bad words. We will remain full of compassion, with a heart of love and no secret hate. We will meditate, spreading a heart of love to that person. This is loving kindness. And with them as a basis, we will meditate, spreading a heart full of love to everyone in the world, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity and ill will. That's how you should train. Okay, remember 2 weeks ago, we looked at the sutra called the Salt Crystal Sutta, and the Buddha gave the metaphor, maybe simile metaphor, the example. Buddha says you put a bit of salt in a small cup and the small cup of water becomes salty, but if your body of water is as vast as the river Ganges, then you put the same amount of salt and you won't even realize, no one will notice, right? Okay, so that applies here as well. So the salt here represents when someone scolds you, all right? And if your practice is good, then if you can remain unaffected, it means that your body of water is large, all right? Then now we come to the next simile, okay, that the Buddha uses to prove his point or to drive home his point. It says, suppose a person was to come along carrying a spade and basket and say, I shall make this great earth be without earth, meaning they want to dig up the whole ground. And they will dig all over, scatter all over, spit all over, and urinate all over. I'm not sure why the Buddha says urinate all over, saying, be without earth, be without earth. Maybe he's very angry with the earth. And the Buddha says, what do you think, mendicants? Could a person make this great earth be without earth? Can a person dig a hole big enough that it swallows the whole world? Mendicant says, no, sir. Why is that? Because this great earth is deep and limitless, like the body of water, deep and limitless. It's not easy to make it be without earth. Actually, it's impossible. You know, that person will eventually get weary and frustrated. Okay. So Buddha says, in the same way, when others criticize you, you should train like this. You'd be like the great earth. No matter how many holes people dig, you are still the great earth. Okay, and I'm not going to repeat that passage because it's the same sequence of words that the Buddha uses. Now the Buddha uses another simile. Buddha says, suppose a person was to come along with dye or paint, such as red lac, turmeric, indigo, or rose madder, and say, I shall draw pictures in space, making pictures appear there. Buddha says, what do you think, mendicants? Could a person draw pictures in space? Now, of course not. You know, how can you draw anything in space? And then the Buddha says, to give another simile, Buddha says, suppose a person was to come along carrying a blazing grass torch and say, I shall burn and scorch the river Ganges with this blazing torch. What do you think? Can you set fire to a river? Basically, that's what the Buddha is asking. And of course, the mendicants say, the disciples say, no, there's no way you can set fire to a river. And then now the Buddha has another simile. Now you know why this sutra is well known for his similes. The Buddha says there's a cat skin bag. I'm not sure if cat skin bag refers to a bag actually made out of cat skin or a leather bag, you know. Anyway, doesn't matter. Both are equally not good things. Animal skin. Anyway, what the point is this: the Buddha says this leather bag is very soft. It's rubbed, very well rubbed, soft, silky, rid of rustling and crackling. Okay, so it's a very soft leather bag. It says then a person comes along carrying a stick or a stone and says, I shall make this soft bag, leather bag rustle and crackle with this stick or stone. So the Buddha says, can that happen? And the mendicant said, no. Why? Because the bag is soft. Just like if you take cloth and silk and you try to make sound with it, or you try to bang it and make sound, that's not going to happen. Then the Buddha says, okay, now you understand. He says, in the same way, these are 5 ways in which others might criticize you. And if that happens, then your training is what? Your training is your mind will remain unaffected, and instead you practice loving kindness and compassion. All right. Then we come to the final part of the sutra where the Buddha uses the simile of the saw. And this is where the Buddha says, even if low-down bandits were to sever you limb from limb, with a two-handled saw. Anyone who had a malevolent thought on that account would not be following my instructions. If you frequently reflect on this advice on the simile of the saw, do you see any criticism, large or small, that you could not endure? So compared to having your arm or your feet or all arms and feet sawed off, what is a little criticism compared to that, right? So that's what the Buddha is saying. So mendicants, you should frequently reflect on this advice on the simile of the saw. This will be for your lasting welfare and happiness. All right, so I only have 2 more slides to go, which is unusual. Normally, I don't have enough time. This is from the Great Song of Awakening by, the Song of Awakening by the Great Master Yongjia. I'm not sure if I pronounce his name correctly. If you are interested, I made a video using these slides that you see on screen in with the recording of Shufu singing this Song of Enlightenment or Song of Awakening. It's on our YouTube channel. You can go there and you can hear Shufu's voice. Shufu sounds like he has a lot of fun as he's reciting this song or poem of enlightenment. And I have 2 poems to share. And that gate that you see in the background on your screen, that's the 3 gates to CDTV. They call it the mountain gate, Sanmen. So here, Great Master Yongzha says, "Let others slander me, I bear their condemnation. Those who try to burn the sky only exhaust themselves." So in the simile, you have someone trying to paint the sky and someone trying to burn the river. This is a combination of both. Someone trying to burn the sky only exhaust themselves. When I hear it, it's just like drinking sweet dew. Thus smelted and refined, suddenly one enters the inconceivable. And then the next slide is, contemplate vicious words as merit and virtue. Then vicious words becomes one's wise and good advices, like what Shufu said. Do not let abuse and slander arouse enmity or liking. So both, okay? Master Yongzha is saying it's not just abuse or slander, but also praise. Although it doesn't say praise here, but it says enmity or liking. So there's praise here. Shufu calls it the 8 winds. It says, how else can the power of compassion and patience with non-production be manifest? In other words, if you don't have that level of Kung Fu in your practice, how else can you break through ignorance? All right? Okay. I can still go on, but it's we are almost close to time. It's also time for questions. Anyone? Anything you want to bring up? Anything you want to share? No? None at all?
Amitabha Dharma Master JinHe.
Yes, Abel.
Can you share me the video, because I wanted to double hear it, because I can't because my English is not good. I wanted to double hear it.
Okay, what video? The Song of Awakening video?
This
Or this Sutra lecture video?
yeah. What is said in this video?
Okay, can you access from China? Are you able to access YouTube?
Access area.
Can you watch YouTube from China?
Watch.
JinHe, Fasher, he cannot
Yes.
access. He cannot access YouTube from China.
Oh,
But you need to send him he can actually access it if you can download it into WeChat, perhaps, if you got a WeChat account.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Abel, I've been I was discussing with Madalena quite some time ago about maybe putting up transferring the videos to a suitable platform so people in China can access. Maybe I'll talk to you, I'll email you, and we can discuss what is a suitable way to do it. Maybe you can talk to Madalena and come up with a solution.
Okay.
Yeah. Then I can upload the videos and then you can download them and see what is the best way.
Okay.
Anyone else with any questions? Okay, how do you translate in Hokkien from Hokkien Chai Si to either English? What is the English equivalent or the Mandarin equivalent?
Gang say, right?
Yeah, but that's Cantonese.
Yeah, but in English it's like not afraid to die, right?
That's literally.
Literally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but is that equivalent?
being brave.
I'm sure that there is, because I'm sure my father would have scolded me many times with the same in English, but I just can't remember. Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually another word that is very colloquial. It's like being gung ho, but I'm not sure whether it can be used as an English idiom. Yeah.
Yeah, gung ho doesn't quite capture that. Yeah, but in Chinese, how do you say that in Chinese? Come on, yes, we have so many Chinese speakers here. Mr. Tan, how do you say Chai Si in Chinese?
不知识.
Does that carry the same meaning?
Yeah, it's the same word.
Okay.
Only in English, some people may use act recklessly.
Recklessly?
Act recklessness.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but that's different, right? Somehow other certain Chinese sayings you just cannot translate. Yeah, it just doesn't capture that the same spirit. Okay. Okay, it looks like we have another few more minutes. Really, no questions today? Nothing at all? Oh my. Okay.
JinHe Fasha is a very comprehensive lecture. Thank you. I think we're all absorbing what you just said. Yeah.
You've been very polite. Okay. Okay, let's look at one sutra before we go. Okay, since we have a few more minutes. This sutra is called the Matu Sutta. Matu means mother. Why? Is because let me go back to the early. Okay, you can close your eyes because I'm going to flash through the slides. Let me see, how do I go to see all slides? Okay. All right. If you look at your screen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Number 7 down, giving rise to compassion. All right. Now we come to giving rise to compassion, and it starts with this called the Matu Sutta. Why is it called the Matu Sutta? Because the Buddha says, from an inconceivable beginning comes the wandering on of rebirth in samsara. A beginning point is not discernible, though beings hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving are transmigrating and wandering on. In other words, just keep getting reborn and reborn and reborn. And when that happens, the Buddha explains, a being who has not been your mother at one time in the past is not easy to find. A being who has not been your father or your brother or your sister or your son or your daughter at one time in the past is not easy to find. So everyone, more or less, is your relative. Okay? And imagine that the people that you meet, say you see someone on the street going through a hard time, maybe a homeless person. Most people ignore people like that. But imagine if you had the ability to see into your past lives and you realize, at one time when I was this particular person, this person in front of me was my son, or he was my father. And of course, he has forgotten who he was. But you remember the kindness that this person showed to you, the sacrifices, the love, and that you remember. And when you remember, you remember with emotion. Okay, it's not just, oh, you remember like what you ate last week. You remember as you remember your own relative right now. And you remember how important this person was to you. Okay. What would you do? Would you just ignore that person? Can you bring yourself to ignore that person just like everyone else? Probably not, right? Yeah, so that's how bodhisattvas are. Bodhisattvas, when they look at people, they're able to see the connection, which is how bodhisattvas are unable to, they just want you to be happy. Okay? All right. So the Buddha explains, he says, why is that? From an inconceivable beginning comes the wandering on. The beginning point is not discernible, though beings hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving and transmigrating and wandering on. And Buddha says, long have you thus experienced stress, experienced pain, experienced loss, not just you, but all your loved ones, swelling the cemeteries enough to become disenchanted with all fabricated things, enough to become dispassionate, enough to be released. Okay, so why am I sharing this sutra with you? Well, when someone is causing you trouble, Buddha says, consequently, you should think about that person thus. This person, it seems, as my mother in the past carried me in her womb for 10 months and removed me without disgust, as if it were yellow sandalwood, my urine, excrement, spittle, snot, and played with me in her lap and nourished me, carrying me about on her hip. And this person, as my father, went by goat paths and paths set on paths to pursue the trade of merchant, meaning they devote a lot of their time trying to earn a living so that they can provide you with what you needed. And he risked his life for me by going into battle in double array, by sailing on the great ocean in ships and doing other difficult things, and he nourished me by bringing back wealth by one means or another, thinking to feed his children. Okay, so the Buddha says, as my brother, sister, son, daughter, this person gave me such and such help, so it is unbecoming for me to harbor hate for him in my mind. Also, their anger will only lead to their own harm. So if that person is angry and that person is someone you care about, you feel bad because that person's anger makes them create further unwholesome karma, which will lead to their future suffering. So it says, for one who is owner of his deeds, heir of his deeds, he will become the heir of whatever deed he does. And this is not the kind of deed towards enlightenment or good rebirth, but towards one's downfall. So for someone who's already damaging or creating future suffering for himself, if you get upset with that person, or you can scold the person or make the person suffer more, it's like, how can you bear to add on to that person's suffering? By adding on to their anger. By right, you should want them to calm down as soon as you can. At the very least, don't upset anyone. At the very least. Yeah. Okay, so let me see. All right, yes. So that's the last slide that I have for giving rise to compassion. And with that, we conclude today's lecture. So far, we have shared in the last few weeks many practices for us to overcome our own shortcomings when we encounter situations with people who make us upset. Then next week, we will continue with a few more. All right? Okay. Let me end this slideshow and get dedication of merit. Okay, I'm going to put my palms together. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, let's do 3 bows to the Buddha. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Realm Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Okay, Amitabha everyone. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you, Dharma Master.